Happy Wednesday, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this LinkedIn Live. Do pardon some of the delay here. My name is Sherrell Dorsey. I am founder and CEO of The Plug. Really excited to have you all in the room. Today, we are reporting from the World Business Chicago and Chicago Venture Summit Future of Food 2022. We are really excited to have this conversation and to partner up with World Business Chicago to talk to amazing and incredible founders as well as venture capitalists about the future of food. I'm not sure how many of you all are familiar with Chicago's growing innovation scene, but Chicago does rank the highest for food innovation in this country. We are going to be hearing from Disha Gulati, who is the CEO and co founder of Here Market, and really getting a true sense of what it's like to build directly from the city of Chicago. So, how many of you all are in the room and are part of Chicago's either food network or are building a food and tech company? Definitely please use the comments below to help us understand who is tapping in today. I also just wanted to give a quick shout out to everyone who's joining in. Kimby Holmes, looks like you are actually there in Chicago. Let us know if you are at the Food Summit today. Brandon, Chef Brandon Dandridge, great to be connected. Really excited to see you, as well as looks like Sammy and Chic, Tyrone. Great to see you all. Thank you so much for popping into our LinkedIn Live. Looks like we are just about ready to have Disha join us. And so, Disha, welcome to the LinkedIn Live. It's great to finally meet you.
Hi there, Cheryl.
How are you? How are things going at the summit today?
Oh, they're fantastic. We have a packed house outside. I just kind of, came in here for some quiet time, but we just wrapped up a panel on the future of food and what it means for brands to go out there and get funding.
Absolutely. I mean, this is also the essence of our discussion today. You've had some tremendous success. You have such an impressive background. I want to give you the chance to really tell us about your background and how you came to found Here Market.
Oh, all right. It's quite an interesting story. So I actually I was a management consultant for a long time, but I had an extended, I'll say, life in consumer product goods. I used to work for a company called Mondelez International, which, if you haven't heard of them, I'm certain you've heard of their brands. They make Oreos and Sour Patch Kids and Chips Ahoy and all of these amazing snacks that we've
All
grown.
of my favorite snacks.
Right, exactly. They're actually the largest snacking company in the world. And I used to kind of lead their analytics for them. And this was around the time when, e-commerce was something that the consumer packaged good companies, the large ones, was really starting to take notice and think about kind of creating these direct to consumer channels for themselves, right? So it was quite an exciting time. And at the same time, as they were kind of thinking about how they want to come into this space, there were a lot of emerging consumer brands that were going directly to the consumer. And they were doing an amazing, amazing job at it, not just from kind of a sales and traction perspective, but from like really understanding what the consumer was looking for in this space. So around that time, I was like, this is really exciting. And I kind of want to be on the other side of the action. I want to go out there and disrupt this very traditional kind of retail value chain that had been built out. So I left Mondelez, but quickly realized that I knew very little about starting a technology startup in this space. So I went and worked for a tech incubator in Chicago called 1871. It is actually one of the largest tech incubators in North America for early stage companies. And I worked for them, and I spent 18 months kind of learning the ropes in terms of what it is like, because I'd run big organizations and big groups within companies of 100 people and more, but I'd never actually started a company with 2 people or less, right? So built kind of my network of VCs and other pure entrepreneurs and kind of other women entrepreneurs, right? And truly, when I felt like, okay, I had the right tools in my tool belt.
For Here. You are pairing chefs with visibility and opportunities. There are some sort of specialty and artisan, environments from a retail perspective as well. Can you talk to us about all of the foundation of Here Market and how it operates in the world?
Yeah. So, and before I go there, I have to tell you guys a little bit of a story. So, Here Your Market wasn't a straight line for us. So, when we first started the company in late 2019, it was called Here App. And we were still in the restaurant space, but we were trying to solve for a completely different problem. We were trying to help restaurants with group dining and experiences with kind of large party reservations. And we started the company late 2019. We launched our MVP in February of 2022, February of 2020, sorry. And then we all know what happened in March of 2020. The pandemic hit and group dining became illegal. We were literally working on a product whose services were illegal in all 50 states. So our business concept wasn't relevant any longer, and no one knew how long the restaurants would be closed for. And so a lot of the partners that had partnered with us for the MVP reached out to us and said, "Hey, the dining room is closed. We're trying to figure out how to diversify our revenue streams, and we think we can make, I can jar my most popular pasta sauce or salsa or jams or whatever have you, but I actually don't know how to take it to market. Like, where do I sell it if I don't sell it in my restaurant?" Right. And I don't know anything about kind of setting up an e-commerce operation or a fulfillment operation. And I also want to sell my experiences. I want to sell my time, but I also don't know what the Zoom thing is and how that works. Right. So we started to work with a few chefs here in Chicago with some very prominent restaurants, and we started to take their products and services to market. All the while thinking this was like a short term thing till the restaurants opened back up, and then we would go back to working on what we were working on. But the more we worked with restaurants, the more kind of our chefs and food artisans started to say, "Hey, we want to expand. We want to diversify our revenue streams. We no longer just want to be in the seasonal farmers markets, or we just no longer want to rely on revenue that's coming just from the restaurant. Help us kind of take our product extensions to market." So that's how we built this two-sided marketplace, because we started to see this trend. Every chef, every food artisan we talked to had the same set of problems, which was that they had an amazingly incredible product, but they didn't exactly know how to effectively wrap a business around it.
And so now you all are solving a series of problems for chefs
Yeah.
and also sort of giving those of us who are maybe self-proclaimed foodies like myself or epicurious overall access to these chefs who normally may only be housed in a certain location in a certain restaurant, but they're getting a sense of maybe national and global exposure. Disha, can you talk about how you actually select chefs for the platform?
Yeah, so we have some prereqs in terms of who can be on our platform. So right up front, we don't have home hobbyists. Right. So what that means is, my neighbor bakes the best sugar cookies for the holidays. They cannot be on the platform. All product that is available for sale on the platform is built in a commercial kitchen and or a restaurant kitchen. So that's kind of the first kind of gating criteria. After that, we only deal in consumer products, goods that have a shelf life of 90 days or more. So we're not, and just to be clear, because people get confused sometimes, we're not dealing with prepared meals, for example. So what we're helping our chefpreneurs, we call them chefpreneurs, what we're helping our chefpreneurs with is creating a product extension, which is something you can buy at a grocery store or kind of on a website or whatever the case may be. So, and in addition to that, the third kind of level of screening that we do is, do people want this product, right? So we have a lot of data and analytics in terms of how we ascertain what chefpreneur makes sense to have on the platform, and what types of products kind of make sense to have on the platform. And that's information, and it's not just gating information, Cheryl. If you think about it, it's actually great insight to the creator. So a lot of times our creators will come to us and say, they might be running Michelin star restaurants, and they might come to us and say, hey, I'm thinking of jarring my secret spice blend. Like, what do you think? Right? And we will say to them, okay, spice blends are great, but the one that you're thinking of jarring is very seasonal. So expect to only see sales in the wintertime and not in the summertime, or vice versa, or things like that, right? But these are things that they should be cognizant of as they think about launching kind of new products, right?
Which is a very interesting concept for chefs to be able to sort of test the market, get that feedback and that data from you all before even making a deep investment into some of these sort of new maybe product lines that they're thinking about, or maybe even testing the waters for the first time as not just chefs, but also as entrepreneurs. So I wanted to get an understanding of how you think about the Chicago, food scene and market. Obviously you are taking full advantage of being on the ground at the food summit, but what
Mhm.
makes Chicago the best environment for here to thrive?
Oh my goodness, so many things. And not the least of which, Cheryl, is this amazing kind of microcosm of talent that we have in Chicago. We're such a foodie city. Um, with not just amazing restaurants, but the level of food artisans that we have here in Chicago is just unreal. So we launched here market in August of 2021, and in order to prove out our MVP, we focused just on Chicago. And so in the last 8 months, we have onboarded over 150 creators. Here in Chicago, who are serving over 500 products. And now, when we first launched, we thought we were solving a very local need, meaning there are a bunch of supporters or customers that want to, you know, recreate the restaurant experience at home, right? And in order for them to like really be excited, they must have been to that restaurant, or must have enjoyed food from that chef. But very quickly, what we learned is over 60% of our sales are actually national. So not only is Chicago a very foodie city, but it actually has a nationwide following, right? So a bunch of people were so excited about being able to partake in something that a chef here in Chicago was doing, because they saw them on the Food Network, or they read about them in Food and Wine, or maybe they had just visited Chicago this one time in the summer and had one of the most memorable experiences of their lives, right? So so I mean, honestly, the in addition to kind of having the talent, I think it is the ecosystem that is really thriving and multiplying here in Chicago. I mean, you said it right, we're one of the biggest ecosystems in the country, which is not only a combination of the talent, but also a combination of the resources that are available to us. For example, there is something called the Hatchery in Chicago, which where you can actually go in if you're in the ideation phase of your kind of food product creation journey, and they'll kind of hold your hand and walk you through all the way from ideation to execution to launch, right? We have a VC community, an investor community, which is not only, I would say, interested in the food space, but also they're all foodies. It's so interesting to see their eyes light up when we talk about some of the chefs that are on our platform. And then lastly, I'll say we're also the hub for a lot of CPG companies, right? A lot of CPG companies are headquartered here in Chicago, and in the Midwest in general. So we get a lot of halo effect from that very massive ecosystem that these companies have built.
That's incredible. Thank you so much. You actually kind of precluded some of the questions that I was going to ask you, particularly about this sort of investment community and the energy around the investment community. But before we dive into that, again, for those who are tuning in and who are watching, please also feel free to use the comment section to drop any of the questions that you may have for Disha. We will provide a Q&A towards the end of our discussion here. But please, while we have Disha, let's really tap into her network, her knowledge of the Chicago industry, as well as just her experiences here in food. So feel free to drop those in the comment section. And thanks everyone for already sort of jumping in here. So Disha, you mentioned the energy around the VC community. Obviously, a space for large innovation, large corporations who are in the CPG space. Here really provides that kind of connection point, and potentially an on ramp. And there's also the incubators and accelerators that you referred to as well that are really helping early stage companies go to market, for the most part. So, can you talk about Here's journey, particularly around fundraising? If you're comfortable sharing how much you all have raised currently, which maybe local investments you've seen, support from thus far,
Yeah.
as well as like what is the future for here in Chicago, as you all continue to grow.
Yeah. Happy to share. I feel like, more founders need to kind of share like the true story behind the raises and our metrics. And in saying that, I would say our fundraising journey wasn't easy or linear in any way. And one of the reasons for that was because of the pivots that I had just mentioned previously, where we'd actually started with a very different vision, a very different kind of endpoint, so to say, in terms of how we wanted to enter the hospitality industry, and then how we pivoted because of market conditions, right? But the one thing that really worked in our favor in terms of getting support from the investor community was the fact that right from the get go, I was lucky enough to identify a strategic investor. And just so I can be clear in terms of what it means to have a strategic investor is somebody who is not only a VC or investor, but they also happen to be playing in the same industry, right? So a strategic investor for us would be somebody who is already in the corporate CPG space. So, someone like a Kraft or someone like a US Foods. In our case, it was actually Gordon Food Services, which is the third largest food distribution company in the country. They service over 100,000 restaurants. So, kind of getting their stamp of approval very early on in the journey was something that, to be really honest, kind of carried us through the pandemic. Both from kind of the tangible and the intangible resources that we could tap into because we were a part of their orbit, but also to kind of get validation on the street, on the proverbial kind of Sandhill Road, as we kind of went out there to garner funds, to be like, okay, you have a strategic who's already backing you. They're seeing the vision, and they're seeing the vision in your pivot. There must be a here, right? No pun intended. So our kind of fundraising journey started with some pre-seed capital from Gordon Food Services and their innovation arm called Relish Works. And if there are folks out there who are interested in kind of learning more about how they help startups, they actually have an accelerator called the Food Foundry. So if you're working on an early stage kind of CPG product, you should check them out. And they provide funding and also kind of I believe it's like a 4-month kind of accelerator course into how do you think about launching a brand into food service. But I digress. Our pre-seed round, we got some funding from Gordon Food Services, and we then kind of took that term sheet and shopped it around. So we were lucky enough to get a few angels to sign on, as well as some VC funding from actually not from Chicago, but from the West Coast. And the reason for that is more marketplaces have actually come out of the coast than they've come out of the Midwest, even though we're so food centric. We're not marketplace centric. So, we were fortunate enough to have kind of a blended composition of investors on our platform, on our cap table, I'm sorry, which represented the Midwest through Gordon Food Services, as well as our VCs from the West Coast. In addition to that, if folks are looking to raise, what really worked for us, Cheryl, was that we took advantage of something called the Illinois tax credit here in Illinois. So if you are an angel investor and you invest in a company that qualifies for the tax credit, you actually get a tax credit on your investment, which is very, I'll just say it's a very compelling value proposition for the investor. So wherever you folks are at, you should look into what your state's kind of tax credit setup is for angel investors. So that was kind of the composition of our pre-seed round, a combination of angels, venture, and a strategic. We raised just a little shy of $1 million, and now we're getting ready to kind of raise our next round in the next couple of months, which will be our seed round.
Awesome. And as you look to raise that seed round, will you also still be tapping the local Chicago market for VC for excuse me for capital?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in kind of going through our journey and raising our pre-seed round, Cheryl, we've built so many amazing relationships, right? So every time we got a no from a VC, and we got so many no's, right, was to ask, could you give us a little more color around why you passed on us, right? And in doing so, we built such amazing kind of relationships with some of the investors, right? Where they were like, okay, you're too early for us, but come back when you've reached this point in your GMV, come back when your traction looks like this, or, I just want to see 6 more months of this. One of the issues, I'll say, companies that were raising during the pandemic saw was that people couldn't delineate between what was the pandemic halo effect and transient, and what kind of customer behavior that had shifted was here to stay permanently, right? So a lot of VCs were like, I just want to see you in action for the next kind of 8 to 12 months, and then come back and talk to us, because we find the creator economy and what you're doing within the creator economy very interesting.
That's positive feedback, but I'm sure it could also be somewhat frustrating as well. We've talked about some of the great and the positive components of the Chicago, food scene, particularly as it relates to innovation,
Mhm.
investment capital, some of the incubators that you named, like the Food Foundry, in these environments, particularly in the Midwest, which tends to get overlooked when we think of this idea of innovation. And I know that Chicago's really doing a lot of work to really stand out and let people know more. We had some facts here floating across the screen for those who are tuned in now to really share that Chicago's scene even outnumbers that of Boston and Seattle. I'm actually from Seattle, so that was a fun fact to kind of find
Ooh,
out. But Disha, I'd love to also understand maybe some of the challenges of here market, maybe early on in your journey, or
yeah.
things that you still feel like you all are up against as you go into your seed round of raising.
Yeah, I mean, the challenges always persist. As a startup founder, they just kind of evolve with time. But I say this on any given day, like we'll have 6 ups and downs of like, this is the best day ever, and we're like creating the best kind of company in the world. To like, wait, what are we doing again? Does this even make sense, right? So in terms of kind of the earlier on, the challenge, as I was telling you earlier, Cheryl, was like navigating the pandemic and really separating the fraud from like kind of what were the actual persistent changes that were happening both in the hospitality space, in the food space, as well as the consumer consumption behavior, right? So an example to give you is, a lot of people kind of, you hear of the great resignation, right? A lot of people quit their jobs, and folks that were really passionate about food kind of went into a commercial kitchen and said, I'm just going to make my own product, whatever that is, right? And the question was, when the restaurants open back up, when these folks who have either like quit their corporate jobs and are now bakers, or chefs who got furloughed are back in the kitchen, in their restaurants. Are they going to be able to keep up with what they had initially kind of committed to, right? So one of the challenges for us was to truly kind of have faith, and figure out on the ground if what we were creating was for a longer term creator economy. And what we kind of learned was the food creator economy is actually so big, um, and people kind of want to be in the food space but not necessarily work at a restaurant for a variety of reasons, right? Work life balance, kind of I won't even go into them, but there's a lot of kind of grassroots level kind of pay, inequity, so on and so forth, right? But these are really talented people, and they want to go out there and kind of build their own brands right from the get go, right, and control kind of their own destiny, so to say.
Yeah. And
So,
also, I mean, and Disha, not to cut you off, but just to
yeah,
jump in here too, because we're also seeing just general innovation within the space itself. And as you mentioned, like these commercial kitchens, I know that ghost kitchens have really exploded. You have everyone from the large brands to maybe the new startups who are just even testing food concepts. And when we look at meal delivery, I think even like a few weeks ago, I went to pick up something from a very well-known brand restaurant, and it happened to be a multi-tiered restaurant where you're literally just picking up your food. You're picking up from like some kind of a boxed kiosk. It's coming from the brand that you selected, but they're all sharing the exact same kitchen.
yeah,
And you kind of remove all of the fanfare of a physical location, a bunch of employees and all of that. And so it was really weird, but also very fascinating to see how much our sort of like food chain processes is changing. What I would love to know, Disha, is, how are chefs feeling about this? What's the average maybe chef making in terms of revenue on here market?
yeah. I mean, I will say this. I think we're a little early in our journey to kind of really have those statistics, but I will say that we're growing at a, somewhere between a 40 to 45% month over month growth rate. So you can just tell that our chefs are starting to truly see some significant amount of revenue. I will be like very clear. It's not like they're quitting their day jobs because they're not because we're just 8 months old, right? So we're not there yet in terms of the volume an Etsy or an Amazon would have. But what we are seeing, which is very encouraging, is a couple of things. One, from a consumer perspective, the consumer repurchase and return rate is off the charts. In fact, in the last 3 months, that's gone up by 30%. So people are trying these super interesting but never heard of salsa matchas or chili oils or things like that, and they're like, wait a minute, I really like this, I need to come back and get this. When we stock out of certain things, the kind of like fan mail we get about, when is this back, when is this back, can you just email me when it's back? And I'm like, oh my goodness, why are you checking the website every day? It'll be back in a couple of days. But this is where we have artisans, and they make small batch kind of shipments, right? So,
Yeah.
um, but in terms of kind of growth, a lot of our creators are shutting down their own websites because they're like, let us focus on building the product. This is what we're good at. This is our talent. And you focus on building the digital front door into my product. Right. So a lot of them are seeing so much traction on our platform where they're like, why don't you handle the fulfillment, the marketing, and all the rest of the wrappers that you need around building a sustainable e-commerce business, and let me focus on the product. And
Yeah.
and and therefore we have a very complementary relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I totally get that as well. A lot of us want to just create and do what we do best and not get back down and like sending invoices, running, social media campaigns and all of
Yes.
those things. So I can imagine taking some of that burden off of your chefs. And I want to also know, was that return, that data that you're finding of people returning to certain chefs, to certain products, to certain restaurants, also how did that spark some of the ideas around even launching that small portion of subscription, of a subscription
Yeah.
box for people to test and to try, and how has that maybe funneled people into continuing to return and then also try other chefs or other products or things like that?
Yeah, so you've actually touched upon something super interesting. So, we have a few differentiating factors as to why creators want to be on our platform versus kind of standing up their own website, right? But I will tell you this, Cheryl, before I answer your question. More than 30,000 new consumer products are launched each year, and 75 to 95% of them fail, and they fail because of this very reason, which is this, these are great talented people, and they know how to make the product, they just don't know how to effectively take it to market, right? And it is a multi-pronged effort, and it is very hard for one person to have, kind of all of those skills. This is what we're trying to solve for, and what we're trying to do is get their brand exposure in a variety of different ways, which subscriptions is actually one of the, I would say, one of the most predictable ways to do that. And to your point, we have, for example, a subscription box called the Greatest Hits. So every quarter, we take a look at what our best selling SKUs are, and then we package it into a subscription box and we send it out to our subscribers, which seems to be a great kind of gifting kind of mechanism that people are using it for. I'm going to send my mom this quarterly box, which is like the greatest hit of all the food in Chicago. The other thing that we're doing, which I think is super interesting, is we do something called creator collaborations, which is like a gift basket, for lack of a greater kind of explanation. And basically, what we try to do is we bring together brands that you may have heard of, and talent that you may have heard of, with very up and coming kind of brands as well. So for example, one of the boxes that is really popular on our site is called the female founder box, right? And every single product in that box is from a female founder here in Chicago. But some of those female founders are Michelin star badass chefs who are running their own restaurants, and others are working out of these commissary kitchens and have just launched their brand less than a year ago. And
That's
it's
incredible.
almost like, one of those like rising tides make all boats rise. You may have never purchased this brand because you've never heard of them, but because there are these three other brands that you've heard of in this box, you're like, I totally want to buy this box, and now I'm introduced to something new, right? And another example to give you would be, we're almost at the end of AAPI month, but it's AAPI month, and we've put together an AAPI box where every founder has a AAPI heritage, and we're seeing a lot of success with that box from a lot of corporations. So a lot of companies are kind of engaging in this dialogue, and not only do they want to talk about it, they actually want to support small businesses from that kind of point of view, right? So we're seeing a lot of sales for a lot of our AAPI creators who are in this box. Now remember, like, it would be hard for a corporation to buy one kind of bag of cookies or one jar of pasta sauce, right? But put it together in a nice kind of gifting type of presentation, and all of a sudden you have a new channel.
Absolutely. And it also sounds like you're able to give national exposure to brands and companies. And I can only imagine from a corporate sense, for those who might be getting discovered, from a buyer that may purchase a box to try to find something new and inventive for their stores. So I love kind of that assist that happens, especially with the specialty items, tapping into a diverse set of networks and ecosystems as well. Um, the last question before we move to Q&A, and I know that you all are, again, dropping your questions there into the comments. We will try to get to everyone as we move forward. But Disha, tell us what's next for Here Market. You mentioned that you all are raising
Mhm.
a seed round of funding. But what else is on the horizon for you all through the next 12 months?
Yeah, so I'll talk about two quick things. Of course, we have many plans on our roadmap, but two quick things. One is we're super excited. We just announced a partnership with James Beard Foundation and the city of Chicago. So for the foodies who are listening to this, the James Beard Foundation Awards are hosted in Chicago. And we'll be here in the next 2 weeks. And we are, along with the city of Chicago, curating a box of nominees and or winners, um, from the James Beard Foundation, kind of, alumni network, which we will be selling on our site, as well as the James Beard Foundation will be kind of pushing it through their channels. So it's a big win for the city of Chicago and for Here Market. And it would be a way for folks to kind of engage with all of these amazing chefs all in one box and kind of recreating their recipes at home. Um, so that's one. And then the second thing that we're working on this year is, as we talked about kind of Chicago being such an amazing kind of testing ground for what we were trying to do with Here Market. Well, the test is behind us. I think we've proven that we're onto something in terms of creating a marketplace for culinary creators. So national expansion is on the cards. We just launched our Midwest expansion, and by the end of the year, we hope to be in major cities, kind of across the nation. Working with chefs in Seattle's kind of on my list, Cheryl. I love the food scene in Seattle.
Oh yeah, I have to connect you with some of my friends who are local chefs there doing some really incredible work. So just quick shout out to Jerk Shack, Trey Lamont, and also Communion Miss Chef Christy Brown, who again, folks who opened up during the pandemic and have really found ways to continue to productize and also continue to craft and create local community despite some of the trying times. So love that. Congratulations to you as well with the James Beard Foundation, as well as with the city of Chicago. So I want to start turning this over now to our audience and those who have tuned in. Please, 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 again, continue to add your questions here to the chat box, and our team will do our best to make sure that they are answered. And looks like Kim Holmes, who you should be familiar with. Kim asks, she wants you to share more about your pivot from your last venture into Here Market. So if you're willing to share, Disha, we'd love to hear more of that story.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Before I started Here Market, I actually had another startup that I ran for, I want to say, 18 months. And the reason I pivoted was actually a lot to do with what we're talking about, Cheryl, which is funding. It was in the retail space, and Chicago is a tough market for retail B2C kind of focused startups, but it is a good market for food. So during my time at 1871, when I was interacting with a lot of kind of corporations who were starting to do things in the food space. That is where I met Gordon Food Services, and together we kind of decided that this idea around galvanizing chefs and kind of bringing here together was something that they were also interested in pursuing with me. So it kind of just made sense to have a strategic investor in a pre-made network to tap into, and some seed capital to kind of hit the ground running as we started the company. So that was one of the key reasons why I pivoted. In hindsight, it kind of made sense, because had I not had this support during the pandemic, I don't know if the company would have truly survived the pivot.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that, as well as for the transparency. I think many of us as founders understand sometimes pivots are necessary. It
Yeah.
sounds like you've made such a great use of your local ecosystem and resources, and you're onto something that provides, again, that kind of national use case as we continue to look at and see the food scene really evolve in transition. And hopefully you're also learning a great deal and picking up a great new deal there at the Food Summit as well. I want to go ahead into our next question. So Edward Chupak, I do apologize if I'm not pronouncing your last name correctly, but Edward asks, are VCs looking for positive cash flow or revenue more at this time? Or have you seen a change in expected returns by
Hmm.
VCs?
What a good question. I just after a piano, we were having this conversation about what was it like to fundraise last year when the market was flush with cash, versus this year when the markets are already contracting. And I would say that we are starting to see a marked difference where, all growth is not good growth, right? And if you are trying to fundraise in this environment, you need to have a very good handle on your unit economics. So it is a path to profitability that they will be really, really interested in seeing, not just a path to growth. Um, I mean, and so I think I've answered the question in that way, where top line numbers don't mean everything. It's about margins and cash flow.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Edward. We greatly appreciate that question. And as we start to wrap up here, Disha, one of our attendees' questions, Deanna Parker asks, in what way can people get in contact with you?
My LinkedIn. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, or you can email me. My email address is disha@hereheremarket.com. If I am now a two-time founder, so if you would love counsel on thinking about how to do a startup or how to get funding, I'm happy to chat. And if you're in the food space, please hit me up.
Absolutely. Well, Disha, we really appreciate you taking the time. Really excited about all the successes of Here Market and some of the new milestones. Definitely wish you the best as you go into your seed round of raising as well. And again, thank you for everyone who joined us in this conversation. Just as an FYI, this is recorded. So if you popped in a little later or had to leave early in the conversation, you will get an opportunity to see the replay, and we'll make sure that you get that access to that. Also, if you have not already, please sign up for our weekly briefing at tpinsights.com. We have a lot of conversations as well as exclusive reports and journalism covering founders of color, particularly in innovation spaces that are emerging and robust. Disha, any last words or comments that you want to add here before we depart and say goodbye to our audience today?
Just a very big thank you, Sherrell, for the opportunity. I really enjoyed our conversation, and thank you for, keeping it real. And I don't say this lightly. Even when I started my entrepreneurial journey, it's really hard to find, kind of the true insights and the good and the bad about people's entrepreneurial journey. So thank you so much for asking some of those questions. I really appreciate.
Absolutely, absolutely. We greatly appreciate you again. And also shout out to our partners at World Business Chicago. We are excited. We actually have some team members on the ground at the Future of Food Summit. So we're just excited about all the innovations that are taking shape. I do hear it's a little chilly in Chicago, so hopefully you are bundled up a bit. In Atlanta, it's about to start storming here. But at any event, I do hope that you are enjoying every second of the summit there.
Thank you so much, Shell. It was so great to speak with you.
You as well. Thanks, everyone. Take care. And thanks again for joining us. And we'll see you tomorrow with our discussion with VC Renata Moreno. Take care, everyone.
Bye.